If you want a perfect example of an evil system, look at income tax, right? The President of the United States cheated on his income tax to the tune of $400,000, blatantly cheated, in a time when that was a lot of money, and he didn't even get a slap on the hand. So every businessman in America said, "Me too," all right? But you have to remember that the U.S. lived without income tax for longer than it lived with income tax, and that's probably true of most other countries. It's relatively a recent thing in some countries, and the fact is, it was forbidden in the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, the original Constitution forbid income tax, and they had to pass a special amendment in 1913 to get it passed at all. But it's just a tax which encourages dishonesty, which rewards dishonesty. Could there be a stupider tax on earth? And it's not just this ethical aspect. It also creates inequality. It's very well known that the rich have better tax accountants and better budgets for tax fraud and so on, and that they pay far less tax than they should. And they always will, as long as you have an income tax instead of something better. So then that brings up the question, well, before we get into that, let's just look at one other cost of the income tax, which is just the effort it requires. I've read somewhere that it takes up to 39 hours of hard work for a small businessman to get his tax papers done every year. That's probably an exaggeration, but it's still, when you think of every person, almost every working person in the country putting in hours, perhaps days, filling out forms, how stupid, how boring. We have to replace that tax and give amnesty to anybody who owes any back income tax and start over with something better. And something better is the T-tax, a transaction tax. Yes, like a sales tax, like a VAT or a value-added tax, but basically it's a little more generalized even than the VAT, value-added. You don't just collect the tax when value is added. Every time money changes hands, out comes the T-tax automatically, done by computer. All right? So, you can't cheat anymore. Secondly, no more work is required. You can have a great bonfire of all your tax records, and we must encourage the Greek people the day that we get rid of the income tax to have a wonderful nationwide bonfire with all the useless paper that now is so important that we spend so many of our hours on creating. Totally useless, totally antiquated by the T-tax. Now the T-tax is graduated, so as a result, the amount goes up depending on the size of the transaction. And this gives governments a great tool for fooling with the economy and adjusting and rewarding certain sectors and so on. And what's interesting about this T-tax is it changes, of course. It moves up and down depending on what people spend. Because, you see, we know now with modern computers, every transaction that happens in the country, we know the day it happens, right away, where the money went, how much was spent. And we also know on any given day how much the government needs to run, total expenses. So now we just take the total expenses and calculate the T-tax for the day so that it will cover total expenses. So this is interesting because, for example, during the tourist season, when there are millions of tourists in Greece spending money, the tea tax will go down since more money is being spent. So the tourists will help you pick up part of your tax bill. All right, that's how it works. Now, the wonderful thing about this is that you now have a balanced budget. You no longer need to borrow money. Since the government is always paid up fully, day to day, you get rid of the interest on money which is paid by governments. Money paid by governments which does not benefit any citizen except the holder of the bond, all right? So this is money being bled out of the society now. So the moment you eliminate that in Greece using the tea tax, tremendous prosperity as you eliminate this loss factor.